In left-leaning people having a change of mind when the bill comes due news, New York City lawmakers are looking at a rollback of a climate change law because, suddenly people realized all those things were expensive and they don't like to pay for it. People are really in favor of laws that help to stop climate change until, they realize that there's expenses and they're going to have to pay for them. So the lawmakers passed all these wonderful climate change laws. Hooray, climate. Oh, wait, what a second. It's going to cost money. It's going to cost money. Oh, okay. Maybe we should have a second look at that. Not that all those costs weren't entirely predictable in advance, by the way, if you've been paying attention. It's not exactly a surprise, but apparently a surprise to them for some reason. Let's take a look at this story. New York City lawmakers are pushing against legislation that would roll back strict requirements under a new climate change law for buildings covering 800,000 co-op and condo apartments, citing costs that could have their homeowners seeing red. So wait a second, we're about to pass a law that would cause 800,000 people's bill to radically increase. Maybe we should have another look at it. The local law, also known as the Climate Mobilization Emissions Law of 2019, set limits on greenhouse gas emissions of building starting next year to help New York City reach the goal of a 40% reduction by the year 2030 and an 80% reduction in the city by calendar year 2050. So they passed this law in 2019 saying, okay, in 2024, we're going to start having this thing come into effect. And wait a second, I can't help noticing it's September 2023. The future finally came. They're going to have to start doing this. And this is expensive. People were all in favor of it, and now the bill's coming due, and they're like, wait a second, this is going to cost us a lot of money. The bill, the local law rather, requires buildings with more than 25,000 square feet to replace their old heating oil and natural gas boilers and to switch to electric heat so as to cut down on greenhouse gas emissions. The city law covers existing buildings, which amount for 2/3 of the emissions that they say in the city. So you got to renovate all those buildings. You got to tear out your heating oil and natural gas boilers and put in electric heat, among other things, for 800,000 buildings. And you got to pay for it. So yeah, the proposed easing of the green regulations comes just days after New York major business group launched a $1 million campaign to push the governor and state lawmakers to ease state anti-pollution laws tackling climate change, arguing the regulations are too costly to both them and the consumer who actually has to pay for all this. What? We have to pay for all that green energy? I just thought it was magic unicorns that came from the sky. The Queens Democratic Council member, Linda Lee and Sarah Ung, have said the bill makes necessary revisions to make it easier for business owners to comply with the law without punishing apartment owners, saying Local Law 97 current structure unintentionally jeopardizes the housing stability of many working and middle-class condo and co-op owners. Whoa, that New York City law, it's going to hurt the poor. It's going to hurt the poor by causing them to spend so much to rip out systems that are working and put in new systems at, considerable expense. This is bad, they say. Our forthcoming bill will provide necessary adjustments, acknowledging past efforts of many co-ops and condos to reduce emissions and their use of open spaces to mitigate environmental impacts. The city councilman saying, quote, the bill signifies the start of a more inclusive process that recognizes personal stakes many homeowners have in the legislation. The sustainability of our city and financial security of our residents are not mutually exclusive, as they want to have their cake and eat it too. The new proposed bill, which will solve all the problems, I'm sure, if approved, would take into consideration open and green spaces as part of a building's gross floor area when calculating emission limits, make it easier to comply with the law. So if you have green spaces, then we factor those in because they're not producing emissions. So the rest of the building doesn't have to be as environmentally friendly. Eases annual gas house limits if buildings have made prior retrofits, such as oil to gas conversions or the installation of solar panels. So, we'll give you a break if you've already done retrofits in the past, even though they're not the new fancy retrofits that we like. roll back penalties for buildings with an average assessed value of $65,000 or less, mandate courts to regard the median property value of units in the building as a factor when imposing penalties. The group representing co-op and condos raised a warning flag about the potentially steep green costs in the spring, launching TV, digital, and mailing campaign in 18 districts across the city saying, quote, "We're not looking to dismiss Local Law 97, heaven forbid, but refine it. Many homeowners are under pressure to meet the city's sustainability mandates. The new legislation seeks a middle ground that upholds both environmental goals and homeowners' economic well-being as we try to avoid the consequences of our own Green New Deal." The mayor's office, for their part, had no immediate comment on the proposed bill, but 2 weeks ago, they said they strongly backed the green emissions reduction law, launching Getting 97 Done plan as part of their plan to get compliance with the new law, saying, quote, "Every part of Getting 97 Done plan builds towards one core goal, reversing the effect of climate change. The data shows our administration efforts are already working, and we're going to continue moving forward. Building owners are learning every day that complying with Local Law 97 and going green will save green, and we're addressing climate change from all angles." So they say going green saves money, and the landowners are like, no, not so much. It's going to cost us millions and millions and millions of dollars and price out the poor and a whole bunch of stuff. But the mayor isn't, saying any of that, at least publicly. The city hall plan includes obtaining city, state, federal, and utility-based funding to help pay for the upgrades and meeting compliance. So let's find someone else to pay for it, as always, because we don't want to. Thus, that brings us to the end of the story about New York City lawmakers having second thoughts about the consequences of their own city's law that would require 800,000 co-op and condo apartments to, among other things, retrofit their heating, to tear out their oil or natural gas and make it electric, because that would, make the environment better. And they're like, wait a second, that'd be really, really expensive. And now they're going to the state to try to bail them out of their own city's ordinance, because they're like, okay, this is really bad, but we can't be seen to reverse it. So let's go to the state and beg them for help. Oh no, it was the mean state who did it, not us. Oh no. As they try to desperately, not have the consequences of their own policy, all of which were obviously foreseeable. Like, again, none of this should be a surprise. Like, these aren't some sort of unforeseen consequences. These are all readily foreseeable. With just thinking about it, like, you just give some thought about it, be like, what would that actually mean? And, just use your brain parts, and you should be able to determine that this is all foreseeable. But apparently, once the bill comes due, we're all surprised by it. Surprise Pikachu face when the bill comes in. And we'd like to, not have the consequences of our own policy, but we also don't want to reverse our policy. So we'll get the state to do it and then pretend we had nothing to do with it. So that's what we're doing over in New York City. So the Green New Deal has failed, at least on a city level. And that brings us to the end of discussion of this story.